straight up. Everybody ready to go? All right. Okay. So
I lost Vince. Oh, there he is.
All right. Okay, I will call the City Council, the City of Temple City regular meeting to order for May 19th, 2020, pursuant to Section 3 of Executive Order N29-20 issued by Governor Newsom on March 17th, 2020. Cities are allowed to council meetings via teleconferencing, and members of the public can observe and address the meeting telephonically or electronically. Just like to announce that for those who are in, your microphone will be unmuted during public comments, and public comment is open during item discussion. You can also email request to speak to city clerk at templecity.gov. Do that now. Subject line, the item you wish to provide comment. Okay, so I will ask our city clerk to please take roll call.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Mann?
Here.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Here.
Councilmember Vizcarra?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Yu?
Here.
Mayor Chavez?
Here. Okay, tonight I'm pleased to announce that giving our invocation tonight will be Councilmember Sternquist. So Cindy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you,
Amen.
Councilmember. Now, if everyone will please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
Flag of the United States of America
and to
and
the
the
republic
republic
which stands
One nation.
one nation
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Thank you. Sound like we had the national anthem starting there for a minute. Somebody,
I think that was Brian Cook.
that was Brian Cook? Okay. Okay. Well, before we get into our agenda, I want to, of course, welcome our new council member, Fernando Vizcarra. It's great to see you, and it's great to have you back. It hasn't been 4 years. I'm sure it probably seems longer to you, but I speak on behalf of the entire team. We're pleased to have you back. Look forward to at least the next few way. We'll all get back together again. Regular chambers. So thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Great. Vince, did you want to say something?
I just want to remind folks to perhaps turn off your mic when you're not speaking, because I'm hearing feedback.
Yeah, there is some feedback.
Is that where it comes from?
Yeah, sometimes. So if you aren't speaking, then you probably should mute your microphone, but just remember to unmute it when you want to speak, because we'll see your mouth moving, but we won't hear anything. So, okay. So we will now move on to our ceremonial matters. We have one presentation. We have Building Safety Month, okay? And so I would like to if you bear with me, I'm gonna read the proclamation, and then we're going to have Director Reimers have a brief presentation afterwards. So this is the 40th annual Building Safety Month, May of 2020. And whereas the City of Temple City is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety and economic value of the buildings and infrastructure that serve our residents, and whereas our confidence in the structural integrity of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety, and fire prevention officials architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these guardians are dedicated members of the International Code Council, which brings together officials that are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us. Whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of these largely unknown protectors of public safety, our local code officials who assure us of safe, efficient, and livable buildings. And whereas safer buildings, safer communities, safer world, the theme for Building Safety Month 2020 encourages all Americans to raise awareness about the importance of safe and resilient construction. Building Safety Month 2020 encourages appropriate steps everyone can take to ensure the safety of our built environment and recognizes that the implementation of safety codes by local and state agencies has saved lives and protected homes and businesses. And whereas each year, in observance of Building Safety Month, Americans are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety and economic investment, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, I, Tom Chavez, Mayor of the City of Temple City, California, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2020 as Building Safety Month. Accordingly, I encourage our citizens to join with their communities in participation of Building Safety Month activities. And so with that, I will ask our Community Development Director, Reimers, for a brief presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Our building and safety staff are much like electricity, and that they're a vital, necessary part of our lives that we often really don't think about. It's easy to take them and the work that they do for granted. When we enter a building, we rarely wonder, is this a safe place? And that's because building failures are rare, and that's because of the good work that our staff and other staff like them do. But building safety staff not only do just building safety, they also spend a lot of time doing conservation work as well. And that a large chunk of the building code now also includes rules about reducing water and increasing energy efficiency. So I'm grateful that we're taking some time out to recognize their role in the city. Just to let you know about what the staff does, our staff issues between 1,700 and 2,000 permits every year. We serve between 3,000 and 3,400 customers a year. Our building staff inspects, does about 2,900 inspections or 15 inspections a day. That's a lot of paperwork, that's a lot of plans to review, and that's a lot of things to inspect. So I want to thank our staff for being a well-oiled machine, a group of well-seasoned professionals that are courteous to our customers. They do demonstrate initiative, they know how to solve problems, and most importantly, they're dedicated to keeping the people of Temple City staff. So I want to say a big thanks to Sylvia Robles, our building permit technician, Bill Reed, our building inspector, Viet Tran, who also does some inspections as our senior code enforcement officer, and Dennis Tarango and Isla Jefferson, our building officials. Thank you, Mayor and council members.
Thank you, Director Reimers. And please extend our thanks and congratulations. I know that our city staff does a fantastic job, and you know, especially in these times, and they've adapted and continue to serve our community with professionalism and making sure that everything is done proper. So thank you, and thank you and your staff. Okay, so now we will move on to item 6, public comments. Council will now hear public comments regarding items not listed on the agenda. The procedure to address the council is highlighted on this agenda first page. So first, I'd like to ask the city clerk if there are any email requests to speak.
No, Mayor, there are no email requests.
Okay, for those who are calling in, we will now unmute your microphones in order to avoid callers from speaking over each other, please state your name so that you can be added to the public comment list. City Clerk will call upon you when it is your turn to comment. Please be reminded that you have up to 3 minutes to speak. Do we have anyone out there in the public who wishes to speak at this time?
This is Carol Hill with Harrison Associates, just to let you know, so you know which number, which mic I'm on.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Okay.
This is Cindy
You're welcome.
Rigney, San Gabriel Valley Humane Society, just to let you know I'm here too if needed.
Okay. Did either of you want to say anything at this time? You're free to do so. I know that we have some items on the consent calendar for
Yeah.
either. So I'm sure you're waiting to see if any comments come up there. So thank you. Thank you very much for being there.
That's correct.
Okay. So hearing no further public comments, I will close public comments at this time. And we will now move on to our consent calendar. All consent calendar items may be approved in a single motion as recommended unless removed for further discussion. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any objection? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you will please take roll call.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist,
Is Cindy still with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Viscara,
Okay, remember to unmute your microphones, guys.
That was a yes.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem You,
Yes.
Mayor Chavez.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And so thank you those who are on the line. Some of your items I know were on the consent calendar and that was unanimously approved. So thank you for your time and look forward to doing future business with all of you. Okay, so now we will move on to item number 8, our public hearing. First item on the agenda will be resolution number 20-5473, ordering the levy of citywide lighting and maintenance district assessments for fiscal year 2020 to 2021. And Mr. Cook, who will be providing that report?
Both I and Mrs. Pagadas will be providing a very quick staff report.
Okay.
Mayor, members of the council, before you is the annual resolution allowing for the levy of the current rates for the landscape and lighting district. Just as a reminder, this past January 1st came effective the legislation that Senator Rubio passed last year, which allowed us to bring together both assessment districts, both the ad valorem property tax and the assessment district, to make it as one fund all together. When we get into the third quarter budget report, part of the reason why we are in a surplus position is because of that action, along with the conservative budgeting approach. But there is no increases. This is the normal rate that you annually approve. And unless Mrs. Pagadas, there's anything else I need to add, that would be it.
Good evening. No, you've covered everything. This is our annual levy to approve. As you recall, last city council meeting, you approved to accept the engineer's report. And so today's resolution is authorizing us to work with the county to levy these assessments to those property owners in the district.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. So we will start off with council questions, and I'll first start with Council Member Mann. Any questions?
I have none. Thank you.
Council Member Sternquist?
I have none. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Viscara, any questions for staff?
No, I keep forgetting. No questions.
That's okay. We've all gone through that. Still doing
Okay.
that. Thank you. All right, Mayor Pro Tem, you.
No questions. Thank you, Mr.
Okay. And I have no questions either. So, clerk, to check public comment email.
Mayor, there are no email public comments.
Okay, and do we have the microphones? Do we have anyone from the public out there that would wish to comment on this item at this time? Hearing none, I will close public comment. And so are there any final questions or comments by the council? Councilmember Mann?
No further comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Sternquist?
No further comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Viscara?
No comments.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Yu?
No further comments. I think quoting Mr. City Manager is a perfunctory function we do all the time.
Yes, and I have no further comments as well, so I will now entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will move to adopt resolution number 20-47, ordering the levy and collection of fiscal year 2021.
A second?
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any objection? Hearing none, I will ask the city clerk to please take roll call.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Mann?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Viscara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Chavez?
Yes. Okay, that is unanimously approved. We will move on to item number 9, business fiscal year 2019-2020 third quarter budget review, revenue, expenditure, and capital projects summary reports and treasurer's report. So, Brian, are you going to be starting with that, and then we'll move on to Ms. Paragas, or how are we going to go?
That's the way I'd like to proceed, if that's okay, Mayor Chavez.
Of course, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Usually we do not bring you the third quarter budget or any quarterly budget report generally for discussion. But considering the events of the last 3 months and the impacts that we have seen both on the revenue side and the expenditure side, we thought it was prudent to have a brief discussion and an overview. As we've discussed before in prior COVID-19 updates, the city has been well positioned due to the city council's very conservative approach to both budgeting, revenue projections, and the great work by staff and the administrative services directors, Ms. Pyras being the most recent administrative services director over the last few years, to really put the city in a position to weather a financial storm. This storm is hitting, it is beginning, and we are weathering it. It will take diligence and a very cautious approach going forward. As I mentioned prior, part of the reason we're in a very good financial position as well is because of the issue that we had before with the landscape and lighting district, where the general fund was subsidizing the landscape and lighting district by a little shy of $400,000 a year. That was essentially wiped away, and as part of your mid-year budget adjustments, was picked up by the landscape and lighting district's ad valorem property tax, which had a positive fund balance going forward and a surplus. Mrs. Pyras is going to go over about 4 or 5 slides and any questions that you may have of us as well. This is somewhat of a prelude to our budget discussion. We'll be having a special city council meeting in closed session next Tuesday, and then shortly thereafter, budget discussion. But this is giving you a bit of a preview. This is the third quarter. The fourth quarter should see similar rough news coming from revenue reductions going forward. But there's several positives that Mrs. Pyras is about to go over with you. So thank you for your leadership in allowing us to, one, provide services, work with the employees, and do so in a conservative manner that allowed us to get through this first part of this event and for us to continue forward financially in a sound and safe manner. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Pyras.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. The item before you is requesting the council to receive and file the fiscal year third quarter budget report for 1920 and the related documents, and also authorize staff to revise the revenue and expenditure estimates. The slides that I'll be showing you will provide analysis of those expenditures and revenue revisions. City Clerk, will you be giving me the power to show my screen?
Yes, you're made a presenter.
Okay, so
Here's the big test.
I know where, let's see.
No rush.
Can you make the other SB the presenter, please? Thank you.
We can see it now.
Okay. So the background is we adopted the 1920 budget on June 6th of 2019. However, over the past few months, we've made various adjustments both on revenues and the expenditures, mainly for the general fund. So what this presentation or the slides will cover are primarily general fund transactions or revisions. As Mr. Cook mentioned, the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic has really affected our revenues, specifically all those cities that depend on sales tax, depend on transient occupancy taxes that come from their lodging facilities. So the next slide will show you what we're proposing as far as the revisions in our general fund revenues. In the blue, I don't know if you can see it, in the blue font to the left shows you the current budget for these specific revenues in the general fund. You'll see real estate transfer tax, the recreation fees, sales tax, temporary parking permit fees, and the transient occupancy tax. As you can see, the biggest of the budget is the sales tax. However, unlike a lot of the big cities who are significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, our sales tax is comprised only of 14% of our current general fund revenue budget. So other cities, their sales tax can consist between 40 to 50% of their budget. So they're highly affected by the reduction in the transactions of retail sales, vehicle sales, anything that has sales tax attached to it. Here we are requesting these reductions. For the real estate, we'll start with real estate transfer tax. This does not affect our property tax. Therefore, I'm not requesting any reductions in our property taxes at this time. The transfer tax results from sales of real estate properties. The reason why I'm requesting a reduction in this is as there are projections that the sales of real estate properties will slow down. So as you can see, we're only budgeting $180,000. With this approval of the $40,000 reduction, we're looking at a budget of $140,000. The next one is also is one of the big impacts that the COVID-19 has in our revenues, which is recreation fees. Our programs for the Parks and Rec have been canceled at this point. We are looking to other programs that we can do online. However, in analyzing, there will be no programs provided on site through June 30th. We are looking at a reduction $275,000 for the rest of the year. So that, as you can see, it only makes up 3.8% of the current revenue budget. To this date, that will be, with the reduction of $275,000, it'll only be 2% of our revenues. The next one is the big one, is sales tax. However, we're only projecting $165,000 reduction for the rest of the year. As during the course of from July through around February, we've been receiving a little bit more than we anticipated. So had we stayed the course with no COVID-19, we would probably have gone over this $2.1 million budget. But now with this pandemic, we're looking at a reduction of $165,000. And by that reduction, the percentage of the budgeted amount goes down to about 13.5% of our revenue budget. As you know, the temporary parking permit fees, we are suspending the enforcement of the permits or the parking, and we're looking at a $30,000 hit for that particular revenue. We have transient occupancy tax. As you can see, it's only $60,000 that we budgeted. And for the rest of the quarter or fourth quarter, we're looking at not receiving another $20,000. As you know, the COVID-19 stopped retail sales, stopped a lot of the restaurants from having dine-in. That's how sales tax is affected, one of the ways. Transient occupancy tax, the hotel, again, we are not heavily dependent on these revenues. So the $530,000 total adjustment in revenues only represents 3.5% of our total budgeted revenue of, let me see the total. So we're going from a $15.2 million budgeted revenue down to about just under 14.7 million. Oops. Here's a graph of slightly just to see, to tell you where we are. The blue is our current revenue projections. The orange includes the adjustments that we're proposing for you. Oops, sorry. The next is the expenditures side. What helps along with this, the reduction in revenues, are a lot of the vacancies that we have. We are not planning to fill those positions that are currently vacant, thus saving us about $150,000 for the year. As you can see, they're mainly from the community development department, and there's, I believe, a position in the city manager department. And then there's one activity for the sheriff's department that one of their sheriffs is, the position is currently vacant right now, but it's only a temporary savings of almost $180,000. And this reduction in cost, it helps again with the total operating budget, is a reduction of 2.2% of our expenditure budget. The one other non-general fund revision that we're asking is for the Proposition A program. We originally budgeted $200,000 for the LIFT program. However, it will not be initiated this year. So we are requesting that that be reduced by $200,000. Here's the general fund current again versus proposed. The green is the current budget, and the goldenrod or yellow is the proposed budget with the current adjustments. So in the budget summary for the general fund, how this affects us. As you can see in our adopted budget, this column here, we were looking at $107,000 surplus for operations. However, during the mid-year and during through the year, we made the adjustments. As Mr. Cook mentioned, we also removed or reduced the transfers out of $380,000 for the lighting and landscape district, which gave us a higher estimate operating surplus of $344,000. As you can see, if you go back to adopted budget, we were estimating $16.5 million in our fund balance for the general fund, but that's before the audited report for fiscal year 18-19. If you go to the current budget, the actual fund balance, audited fund balance, is about 20 million. And when we remove the surplus plus the one-time expenditures, we are estimating $18.2 million at this time. With the proposed budget adjustments, as you can see in the proposed net revisions, we are looking at an operating surplus. Well, the net adjustments is a negative almost $200,000, but we still are estimating or projecting a $144,000 surplus at year end. And then along with the one-time expenditures, we are looking at a fund balance of just a little over $18 million, of which about $4 million of this is estimated as unassigned funds, so we can use those funds for any emergencies, although we also have a contingency balance in part of that 18 million. So that is it for the budget review. The attachments also explain where we stand. At this point, there are no other recommended adjustments besides the ones that were presented to you. They're all coming in as expected. So tonight, I ask that you, the council, approve the revenue and expenditure budget adjustments. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Does that conclude your report?
Yes, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, we will ask then at this time for any council questions. I'll start with Councilmember Sternquist. Do you have any questions?
Yes, just one. Was that a management analyst position in the city manager's office?
No, it was the intern who resigned as she received a full-time job with the county.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Councilmember Mann, any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Regarding the, you mentioned the LIFT program that we had originally budgeted 200,000 for is now being delayed. So my question is that 200,000 a part of the Prop A exchange funds that we just approved as part of the consent calendar items?
No, it wasn't. There was already fund balance available. I'm trying to get out of the screen here. Sorry.
Councilmember.
So, no, it was not. I'm sorry, to answer your question. It was part of the fund balance that was already in Prop A.
Okay. All right. And my other question is, in the attachments where you show the capital, what do you call it? The capital improvement projects.
Yes.
I think as of now, we had budgeted amounts for like the Las Tunas resurfacing and some pavement management street resurfacing, but since we can see that those are ongoing projects, I presume those will be expended by the end of the fiscal year. Is that correct?
We have to spend, I believe, about $400,000 from Prop C, or else we will lose it. So those need to be expended by June 30th. So yes, to answer your question, yes, there's the majority of those funds will be expended.
Okay. And just a general observation, also on the capital improvement program detail, there's a number of items that we had budgeted as part of the current fiscal year budget, but the year-to-date expenditure is zero. So would it be safe to presume that those are projects that are likely not going to be complete this fiscal year?
I know some are in progress right now. I know the pavement management street surfacing is in progress right now. Brian, Mr. Cook, would you be able to answer some of those other projects?
Absolutely. For several of those projects, yes, for the Las Tunas project, we'll be able to expend those monies as we were finishing that project now. Some of the other projects won't be completed, and as part of our budget discussion with you, we'll talk to you about what the council, for the projects that are somewhat in progress or those that are stalled, we'll discuss with you the council's desire to either move forward with those or not continue with some of those going forward.
Okay, thank you. And I guess sort of related to that, my final question is, I guess we'll probably know more as we get into the budget discussion, but seeing the number of items that we probably won't get to this fiscal year, I presume that, I guess, in terms of a net balance of revenues and expenditures, that's, I don't want to call it like a cushion, but those are just monies that won't be spent this year, but was allocated.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Councilmember Viscar, do you have any questions of staff at this time? Go ahead and
I was
unmute.
just wondering, I guess on a kind of a macro scale, if what's happening with the pandemic, is it possible that we'll have to go back to the drawing board in a positive way or a negative way? For instance, if the governor opens everything up and every restaurant in town is going, or just the opposite, this goes through December, how does that affect all this?
Councilmember Viscara, you asked the $64,000 question. That's going to be a challenge. What we will be doing for you as the council to consider is downward shifts before we consider upward shifts and scenarios. Mrs. Pagadas is going to be presenting to you for the council's consideration a very conservative budget. And we will have to consider some scenarios going forward where there are further downshifts. As Ms. Pagadas pointed out earlier, we have a very diversified revenue sources in terms of sales tax. We have a balance of grocery stores, gas stations, but restaurants are one of our big ones. And we have to really assume that that is not going to be back to normal for a while, even a full fiscal year, to be on the safe side. So we believe we're going to have to be very cautious in looking at any type of recovery that's coming forward. Everything that we're reading from GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, everything else, the projections from most economists are not saying a V type of recovery, meaning downward and then quick back up. Many are saying, using the idea of a square root, a reverse square root, or a U-shaped recovery that happens over time. So in terms of what we will be projecting will be at best a slow recovery at the beginning, but we are just starting to understand what the revenue impacts of this event are. Again, because we're a property tax-based city and property tax has already been received, even though we're going to receive some of that, as we learned today from the county, just a little bit later than we usually do, we are in good shape. How that plays out on the property tax side will not play out for us for another 12 to 18 months. If, for example, assessed value hits a downward trend with property values going down. We don't know that yet. That's too kind of far out there for us to really give you a reasonable projection on. So, long answer to your question.
Anticipated. Thank you.
They answered about $32,000 of that question then, is that?
At least.
At least.
That's my goal.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, any questions?
No questions, but I just want to second comment that was made before. I think Mr. City Manager says that we always have a very conservative approach, and I think that because we don't really have a big appetite for sales tax, that's why we're still in good shape, and we'll end this fiscal year in a positive note. I'm glad of that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, and I agree. Sometimes depending on the situation, obviously, we would never probably have guessed that this would actually end up helping us, but actually it has. So it turned out to be more of a positive than a negative. Okay, I will now open up public comment. I'll first ask the city clerk if there are any public comment emails on this matter.
No, Mayor.
Okay, and if you want to go ahead and unmute the microphones, do we have anybody from the public who is listening in wish to comment on this matter at this time? Hearing none, I will close public comment. We will now move on to any final council questions or comments, and I'll start with Councilmember Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Chavez. Yeah, just real briefly, I think it's good news that I mean, kudos to staff for running through all the numbers and somehow getting us onto the positive side of the spectrum. I think as Ms. Paragas had mentioned, the landscape and lighting district monies are kicking in at the right time to kind of keep us afloat a little bit. And I think it's worth mentioning that as part of the consent calendar item, I thought the Prop A exchange was also beneficial and helpful for this unprecedented crisis we're going through. So kind of just seeing the net reductions in revenue that was shown in our presentation, and then seeing the positive funds of those coming in. I don't know, maybe we're just lucky, but the timing, I guess, couldn't have been better. So I won't get in too much to it, but I think I'm looking forward to the budget discussion and seeing how we move forward with a lot of the items, as well as the capital projects I'm particularly interested in seeing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sternquist, any last comments?
Yes, just grateful for the timing of the Prop A funds. I think it's important for those who are listening to know that the exchange of our Prop A funds to Foothill Transit actually help many communities when those monies are, Prop A funds are sold to an agency like Foothill Transit, because they are facing such low ridership right now. Before the pandemic, ridership had dropped about 16%. It's now dropped about 90%. And it's one of those things that it dropped 90% is actually not a really bad thing in times of a pandemic, because you want to have social distancing as much as possible. So for the short term, the amount of ridership being low is something positive for the bus drivers, helps keep people on the buses safer. On the other hand, when we move forward and through this pandemic, the transit agencies are going to be faced with a huge shortfall. So the Prop A funds actually help them, because they can then put them into their general fund and use them to help aid the people that use transportation in the region. So just wanted to share that, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Councilmember Vizcarra, any last comments on this matter?
No further comments.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Yu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to echo some of the things that have been said, and thanks to City Manager Brian Cook and staff for putting such a great report together, and also initially suggesting that we go to our senator for help. Had we not have the landscape district money, I think we're probably in a negative right now. So I think the timing is great, but it's also a reflection of proactive fiscal policy put forth by the city manager and staff. So I want a big thank you to them. Thank you to Senator Susan Rubio.
Okay, thank you. And I agree. I think staff has not only made what we've termed as conservative decisions, but also very smart decisions from an economic standpoint. And it really leaves us in a good position as we enter into, which will likely, I think, and no doubt be a very difficult fourth quarter. And so it's always good to be going in on the plus side, certainly better than going in from a negative side. So thank you very much for all the work you've done, and City Manager Cook and Director Paragas and all the staff, of course, thank you for the time you put in getting this information to us. So with that, I will entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the third quarter budget review and related reports, and to authorize staff to make the budget adjustments in attachment A of the staff report.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Yu. We have a second. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any objection? Hearing none, can we have a council roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist,
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember, thank you.
All right.
Councilmember Vizcarra,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Yu,
Yes.
Mayor Chavez.
Yes. Okay, we will now move on to our next item, and that is the item B, establish new community development block grant programs resulting from funds resulting from the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act, and reallocating CDBG funds designated for fiscal year 2020 to 2021. City Council is being requested to get further direction to the city manager on creating the temporary rental assistance program and the small business assistance program. So with that, I will now turn it over to City Manager Cook.
Thank you, Mayor Chavez and members of the council. Mr. Gulick, one of our planners with our planning team, will be presenting the item. So just that you know, we've been investigating and looking at both programs that at the last council meeting, you gave us direction to come back and look at. There were a variety of different eligible programs to look at. The council had asked us to look at both the rental assistance program and the small business assistance program. Mr. Gulick will go over both of those programs generally, and some feedback of what some other communities have found, and also working with the LACDC. Again, we are a non-entitlement city, which means we do not receive direct funding from the federal government. We receive that through the county, who helps us administer the use and expenditure of federal funds through the CDB, Community Development Block Grant Program. You can split this however you like. You don't have to spend it on one program over the other. You can split it between the two. You can choose one or the other. This is your decision as the council on how you would want to use both the initial $123,000 of COVID-19 money that came down through the CARES Act, and if you choose, and you can elect not to as well, but you can choose to use the remaining fund balance of a little over $340,000 for the eligible CARES Act programs as well. So with that, Mr. Gulick he's already prepared and has it up on the screen.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Good evening, Mayor, council members.
Good evening.
So just a quick background, since we have a new council member tonight. On March 27, 2020, President Trump signed the CARES Act, resulting in new CDBG funds. On April 7th, we were notified by LA County Development Authority, or LACDA, that we would be receiving $123,206 from as a result of the CARES Act. And we presented options to you at the previous meeting, and then you requested staff to bring back the two items tonight. So as Mr. Cook mentioned earlier, the CARES Act, there's $123,206 that would be available. And then some of the council members did discuss possibly putting the housing program on hold for next fiscal year. So there could be up to potentially $346,000. So you're looking at the total budget, almost $470,000 would be available for programs for next, or to help combat the COVID-19 relief. The temporary rental assistance program. So
this would be available to anyone that's been directly impacted relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. They either lost their job or have been furloughed. There are income limits established by HUD. The annual household income cannot exceed the moderate income levels, and I'll show those to you in a minute. And then we used the counties, or we looked at the county's program guidelines that they've already established for this program, or for their own program. So one of the things is that they have to have, or the resident needs to provide a current lease agreement with the landlord, and then there's also some other associated paperwork that they need to provide from the landlord. This is a look at the latest income limits established by HUD. So a family of 2, the maximum income level would be $72,100. That's total household income, or a family of 4 would be $90,100. So if we were to budget the entire amount, almost the $470,000, we had sort of 3 different options here. You could do the entire $1,000 for up to 3 months. We could limit it to low-income households. You could assist up to 156 households. You could reduce it down to $500, and then that would help up to 313 households. Or you could do a combination where you could split 50-50. So half of the money would go towards the low-income households. They could get $1,000. You're looking at 78 households, and then if you open it up to a moderate household income, you could assist up to 156 households. We could do something, also another option, where we just allow people to submit applications up to a certain date, and then equally divide the number of whatever the program budget is by the number of qualified applicants. Those are just some of the things that staff would suggest. One other thing to consider, the city does have the option to use up to 20% of the program budget on the staff salaries or consultant costs. So that could pay up to $93,960, and then that would leave a balance of $375,000 for the rental assistance. And that would be
so that presumably that 20% is used for staff salaries and benefits for the program, right?
The ones that are working on the program.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So the next program, which was the Small Business Assistance Program, there was some information that was brought to our attention today, or we received confirmation from our program or our liaison staff at LA County. There is sort of an issue with this program. One of the things that we wanted to bring to council's attention is that if a business were to fail to meet the job retention requirement that's required by HUD, we could either make the city pay back the grant, or the city could be financially responsible for this. So in one of the confirmations that we got today was that the business is required to retain a low or moderate income individual for at least a year in order for us to not be liable. So if for some reason the business were to go just shut down, completely go out of business, then the city could be responsible for that, the $10,000 grant or whatever amount that we end up deciding on, the council decides on. So back to this program. So it would specifically target businesses that have 25 employees or less, including the business owner, would need to have an active business license prior to the declaration of the emergency, physical location in a non-residential area. We have some prohibited businesses there, and then also there's some limitations of uses for the grants. The same income requirements are what was shown earlier for the residential, or not the residential, the temporary rental assistance program. And then, so if we were to offer a $10,000 grant to moderate income level or below, we could assist up to 46 businesses. If it was $7,500 for each business, then it would be 62 businesses assisted, or you could do $5,000, there'd be 93 businesses, or you could do where we take a certain number of applications or have a deadline and then divvy up the money based on the number of qualified applicants. And then that would also be eligible for using up to 20% of whatever the budget is on staff salaries or consultant costs. So if staff were to program the whole, or if the council were to program the whole amount, the almost 470,000, we'd be able to use almost 94,000 towards staff and consultant costs, and then leaving 375,000 for the business assistance. So here's a look again at the budgets on the left, potential budget. At the top there's 123,000 from the CARES Act. And then if we were to suspend the housing rehab program, we are recommending to keep the youth scholarship program for next fiscal year. That would be 31,000. So combining both the 123,000 and the 346,000, that would leave, that would leave 469,000 would be available for programs. So we're requesting direction to staff on the program options for either both or one of the temporary rental assistance or the small business assistance program. Give city manager direction on which programs to fund and how much to allocate to each program, and issue a public hearing notice. And give the city manager direction on which programs to fund and how much of the fiscal year 2020-2021 CDBG budget, allocating 31,000 for the youth scholarship program, and also issuing a public hearing notice. Authorize the city manager to amend CDBG funded programs up to 50% of the approved allocation, and then also direct staff to return with a recommendation any further modifications to the new CDBG programs on any unused funds for this fiscal year. And also any housing rehabilitation loans that are paid back to provide additional relief related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I am available if you guys have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will go ahead and start with questions by City Council. Councilmember Mann, do you have any questions?
Mayor Chavez, yes, I do have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
The first one is, in the report, staff report, it mentions that either staff or consultant costs could be covered by the 20% of the CDBG funds. So my question is, do we know if we're going to be having staff, or are we hiring a consultant to implement any of these programs? Is that something that has not been decided, or we have a pretty clear idea of who will be working on it?
That, Mayor, Councilmember Mann, that hasn't been fully decided yet, but I'm leaning towards staff assisting, but we may need some technical assistance on some of the program elements. So it may be a combination of both that assist in that process.
All right, and the reason I ask is because I think maybe knowing that, at least for myself, helps me guide or make a better decision on whether we should be using 20% of the CDBG funds to cover that cost. So that's why I asked that question. And sort of related to that, I was wondering if we knew what the actual cost of implementing that program would be from just a staff or consultant standpoint. I know that 20% number is thrown out there, but should we as a council expect the 20% to cover everything, or is it actually a much smaller portion and we need a lot more staff time to cover implementing either program? Do we have any idea about that?
Sure, that's the maximum that's the maximum that we would be able to charge, and that would be the maximum we would look towards in terms of administrative costs. So even if, similar to our administration of our current CDBG programs, the services that we use to assist in the administration of that, they know what those caps are. So it's not like we're expending up to that cap, but we know our goal would be for it to be a lot less, and a combination of staff and probably some technical assistance in dealing with the administration would get us to a lower level, but that would be the maximum.
Okay. And sort of also along related to that issue, in terms of how complex or administratively complicated these programs could be, is from staff's perspective, is the small business assistance program much more complicated to implement, or is the temporary rental assistance program more complex, or are they equally complex? Or we don't know the answer?
I don't know I can't really answer that question at this point, which one is more complex over the other. I can say that what we presented to you and what we have discussed has been one where this is, for lack of a better term, it's not the more complex CDBG type programs that are out there. These are pretty straightforward. This is going to be a lot of paperwork and verification of paperwork more than it is analysis of that paperwork. It's relatively straightforward, and the LACDA will be an assistance to us. We will be looking towards them to assist us with that program. So in terms of other types of CDBG programs that are out there, I'm not going to say this is straightforward, but it's a little bit more straightforward, but still taking a lot of time to ensure the compliance component. Having worked at a prior entitlement city before, the expenses for these types of programs are all about compliance.
Okay. Yeah, because I saw some of the criteria that the businesses or anyone seeking rental assistance has to meet, and I could see some of that paperwork kind of piling up. So I'm just curious to see how complex it is to really roll out that program. I just have one more question. If we do move forward with, say, like a small business assistance program, how would this be conveyed to the businesses? Like, a lot of stores are obviously closed. Do we have some sort of a list of businesses that are, I guess what I'm asking is, are we going to be proactively reaching out to the businesses that might be in need of help, or is this something that we plan on simply saying, here it is, come get it sort of deal? It's up to the businesses themselves to find out about the program and apply for it.
No, I think we would be more proactive, working with the Chamber of Commerce and other entities to try to be as proactive to identify those businesses that are on the fringe but are still, for lack of a better term, going concerns, and they have the ability to still operate. They just need some additional gap funding that this funding provides to them. So we're going to go out and actively look for them, partnering with the Chamber of Commerce and others. So it'll be a combination of it's out there, but also we'll be actively, making some of our own personal outreach to many of the businesses, starting out with a lot of our restaurants as well that seem to still be open and are still operating, and seeing if the council approves this program, seeing if this is actually a viable program for them, considering the requirements.
Okay, thank you. And on that note, I do want to mention briefly that at the last Temple City Chamber of Commerce board meeting, all the board members were very excited about us potentially adopting a small business assistance program. So I think they're very much would be willing to work with us on getting the message out and I guess helping businesses through any paperwork or administrative processes that might come along with that. So sorry, I have one last question. Regarding the small business assistance program, there was one requirement that the business must have a physical location in a non-residential zone. So my question is mixed use considered a non-residential zone?
I'd have to defer to Mr. Reimers or Mr. Gulick on that one.
Yes.
It is, okay. So and this might sound like a silly question, but in our latest general plan, we have certain areas that we've changed to mixed use, but might currently be, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, there might be some areas that's currently residential, but has been rezoned as mixed use. I mean, what if someone was self-employed and used that address, how would we treat something like that? I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. And we do have the opportunity to write the guidelines more specifically than what's in the staff report. We have been looking at other cities' guidelines, and some cities have defined it more clearly, which we can do in ours as well. Another city says that they actually have to have a specific storefront along a commercial corridor or something like that. So we can look at some language to help clarify that.
Okay, because my understanding is, and what's the staff report has made sense is it looks like we're trying to encourage and help the businesses that have, you know, the traditional physical storefront, the definition of a actual storefront, like say restaurants or any of the businesses along Las Tunas. We're trying to help those in particular. At least that's my understanding of it.
That's right.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Yeah, to me, it seems like the guidelines to kind of get to your question that they're trying to, I guess, weed out the so-called businesses run from the home, I think.
Yeah.
And again,
exactly.
more than.
Yeah, which is
to me
why. Yeah, that's why I was wondering if someone would try to. I don't know if that loophole exists, but I figured if there is a possibility of someone trying to squeeze around that, and that wasn't the intent of what we're trying to do, then, well, like I think Mr. Reamer said, that could be buttoned down. So,
yeah, I think we would need to make it right. Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Vizcarra, do you have any questions of staff on this item? You have to unmute, Fernando.
Okay. I'm wondering, do we have any kind of a feel for the volume we're talking about here? In either one, with the rental assistance or the businesses? It seems like the pie that we're talking about is really not that big, and you're not going to get a lot of slices out of it. Have you given any of that any thought?
Sure, Mr. Gulick, if you wouldn't mind just popping up the, and again, this is based on the amount, and if you were to exclusively put everything into one basket, in terms of how many businesses you would help, and we can look at both of them real quick. Thank you, Adam. So there you see with the small business assistance program, if you put all your money in that bucket, that $469,000, you gave a $10,000 grant, you're helping about 46 businesses. You're helping 5,000 a piece. You're helping about 93. If you mind going to the next slide. Thank you, Adam. Technology is amazing. If you helped on the temporary assistance program, again, this has to, both programs have to assist. The business has to retain a low to moderate income employee. The low and moderate income requirements must be demonstrated for the rental assistance too. But if you subsidize for 3 months, about $1,000, you help about 156 homes. If you did about 500 a month, 313, and you could split it a little bit. On other options between low and moderate, you could do a little bit more, but 300 is about the max on the about $500 a month assistance. And split those numbers in half if you were to split half in each program.
I'm not sure that truthfully answered Councilmember Vizcarra's question. The way I heard it was, do we have a sense at this time how many applicants that we would get for either of these? I think, at least to me, it seems that whatever number and whatever that computes out to, I think it's safe to say that both programs or one of them will be probably quickly sold out. Would you not agree?
That's the impression I would have. I can see that going very quickly.
Yeah,
And I don't see where we have out of that the funding that can be used for staff to administer the program. I mean, it's going to delete the amount, right?
Well, yes, it will result in less money to be shared, but I think whatever it may be, and that we don't know. That's but I just believe, based on what we've seen out there and based on what people have been saying, is that there'll be plenty of applicants, and I'm sure that there'll be more applicants than are available to serve. That's my sense, but time will tell.
Do we
Okay.
have? Is there any way that we would know how many people in Temple City are collecting unemployment?
I don't know the manner in which we could try to get some aggregate data potentially. I'm not sure. I don't know how confidential that information is. I'm gonna suspect and assume that it is, but we can see what kind of how the state provides that data, and we can come back to you, and I can try to get you some information or tell you that information is available.
Well, I don't want to be nitpicky about it. I'm just thinking that could be an indicator of what kind of shape we're in terms of employment in the city. I don't know how we do that in terms of the businesses, but my inclination is for us to say, let's do one or the other, not both.
All right, we'll get to that point. Any other questions?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sternquist, any questions at this time?
Yes, just a few. I, like Councilmember Mann, I'm a little reluctant to consider the amount of $93,000 administratively. I'm wondering, I guess my first question would be, how long do you think it would be to implement this program? Are we talking about 2 months, 3 months? Do we have any idea?
We haven't thoroughly talked about it with staff, but we've talked about pulling something together within about a month.
So my thought would be, and wondering, Mr. Cook, if you haven't thought about this, or if you could consider it, is I know that a lot of our staff is working from home, but since so much of the cost seems to be designated towards paperwork and, administrative stuff, looking at making sure people qualify, a lot of that is going to be reference checking and bank accounts, paperwork similar to that. Would we not be able to save some money by, especially if it's going to be implemented in the next month or two, by having some of our employees that are working at home that maybe are not having to deal with the public? And yes, they have, a certain structure that they need to get as far as what they're supposed to do each day. But those people who are continually working with the public and are not interfacing currently might have more time than what has been considered to devote towards those, checking on references, etc.
Sure, absolutely.
So we might be able to, have a considerable chunk of money cut off from that we could put towards the program. And Adam, I'm not sure if I heard this correctly, but did you say you were recommending to not have the $31,000 taken from the scholarship program, or was that correct?
We were recommending to keep that in.
Okay, so my question, if you're recommending to keep that in, is you said for the next year, isn't the next fiscal year starting in July? And we don't know when we're going to be having any sport programs or any programs that the kids would be using that scholarship funds toward. Am I correct in saying that it's from starting in July would be the next fiscal year with that $31,000, or am I off base here?
You are correct, but we could always amend that amount if we know that we're going to be not have offer any programs for, say, until October or December. Then we could always adjust that, do a budget amendment and adjust that.
Right, because I'd like to see if we could just allocate that now, and then, or even, you know, $20,000 of that, because we are going to have a much shorter fiscal year with kids being in programs where they're going to need funding for scholarships.
We will have, I think, 16 or 17,000 that will be coming over from this fiscal year.
Okay, so that adds, I mean, everything helps. And then my next question would be with the Chamber of Commerce. I think we have to keep in mind that not every small business is a member of the chamber. And I think we have to be very careful when, you know, we partner with the chamber, because, I mean, like anything, you're going to try and promote it to the people that are members of the Chamber of Commerce. And I totally understand that, but not everybody has chosen to be a member of the chamber. So I think we have to be careful when we partner with the chamber that they reach out. They have to reach out to everyone, not just chamber members. Of course, we'd like everybody to be members of the chamber, but that's something that's by choice, and they have to pay a yearly fee. And if they were, you know, just getting started, they might not have monies to be members of the chamber. So just something that I wanted us to be aware of. And I think that's pretty much it, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with everything that's been said. In particular, I think that I agree with Councilmember Vizcarra that I think it's probably a lot more cost effective to focus on one program instead of focus on two new programs. I also agree that if, to the extent possible, we should use staff time. Although I think it all depends on the whether staff can actually handle it. But to the extent that we can, we should use as much staff as possible. Personally, I'm more in favor of administering the program for small business assistance.
Before you go too much further into those final comments, well, let's just focus right now on any questions to staff, and then you can. We're not taking any.
I have one interesting question. Now,
Okay.
for the small business, that a grant for just it's not a loan that they need to repay, right? It is just grants that can be used for anything.
The grant is to assist those businesses that have moderate to low income employees and retaining them for at least a year. Is that correct, Mr. Gullick?
Yes, there are some eligible expenses. I don't think we included it, but there are certain expenses that are eligible for the use of the funds.
So it is for retention of the employee. So if I were a sole proprietor of no employee, I'm out of luck.
It could be for an individual business. They would need to be, I believe, below the moderate or below income level. And then there's certain limitations on what they could use on that. I think it's on page 5 at the top on number 6.
And yeah, point number 6 outlines exactly what can be used. It can be used not only on salaries, but operating expenses, inventory, advertising, and also does specifically say individuals who are self-employed are also eligible to apply for this program.
Yeah, but that means that the employee, the low moderate income employee part would not apply then.
Well, that
Right,
seems to be,
it's,
that was one of my questions, I think. How can you be self-employed and still have an employee that does not exceed moderate income limits? That may be difficult to do when you were the only one.
Yeah, that's my question, Mr.
Yeah, there's a HUD requirement, the retention. So the retention would be the having the employee that's below the moderate income limit.
But how do we? I think the question that Mayor Pro Tem and the one I was going to ask is that how do you then justify or how do you allow a self-employed person, which by definition means they usually don't have necessarily any employees or may not, how is that going to make them ineligible for these funds because they have to have at least the one employee who does not exceed the moderate income limit?
They would still be eligible. There's another category that's for, I believe there's a small business owner one, but they still need to be below the moderate income level.
The business owner?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
I think that might be geared more for businesses starting up.
Okay. Okay, Vince, do you have any other questions?
No, but that seems kind of odd for a self-employed person to make less than say $63,000. Thanks.
Yeah, I think there's something missing in these equations here, but okay. Do you have any other further questions, Vince?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks. I just had a couple of follow-up questions. I thank council members for some great questions. I had many of them written down and they were asked and answered. So thank you for doing that. I just want a little clarification. I think, and I'm still coming back to this 20% for program costs that has been kind of brought up by at least most members of the council, this $93,000. That to me, that seems to take a pretty good chunk right off the top. And I'm not sure I really heard the answer. I think it was asked, and that is, could that figure be less? Of course, that may be difficult to tell right now, but what is the possibility, or has any thought been given to, can we make these programs work, let's say for 10% or 15%? We know that 20% is the limit, but is it possible, or has any thought been given to maybe doing it for less than that 20%?
Mayor Chavez, I wouldn't say that we've done a thorough analysis of that because we haven't, but that would be our goal. Our goal would be to try to get as much money out the door from a programmatic standpoint as possible. So finding that combination where we would need some technical assistance in, reviewing some of the required documents, but limiting that to not having outside assistance doing the whole program, which would lead us down to much less than 20%. But can I give you an exact kind of, it's only going to be 5 or it's only going to be 10? I don't know, but I can tell you that that's our goal, to push well, as far below that as we can.
Okay, and again, I think you probably understand the reason why we're asking that is because obviously the more money we can put in here for the assistance, the better. And, you know, I think anytime someone has a program, I think one of the first things they're always looking at least from the public standpoint, well, how much of this program is going to cost and things like that. And is it being wisely spent, I think. So that would be something I think that certainly we would want to know and have a better handle on as already has been discussed. I'd also like to get back into this business program. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, and I think Mayor Pro Tem, you started to allude to this, and that is, and also Councilmember Mann, is that in looking at the report, it seems to me anyway that the small business assistance program would be a little bit more difficult to manage. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that there are definitely some possible penalties to the city that are not present as far as the rental assistance program goes. And what I mean by that is, I thought I heard Mr. Gulick say that if the employee is not kept for a year, or if the business goes under within that year, the city will be responsible for paying that money back that the business received. Is that correct?
What that would mean is that either the city would have to go back through either if it was a bankruptcy proceeding or a wind down proceeding with that business to get that money back from that business. That's the confirmation that Mr. Gulick was talking about from LACDC today that we've confirmed, and we've confirmed with other agencies as well since this afternoon. Some agencies are in their contracts with the businesses look to be, in line to try to get some of that money back. But as we understand it with the program guidelines now, that if we were not able to get that money back from that individual business, that we would be required to use either future CDBG funding to pay back those funds.
Sort of like the credit. You take a credit card and somebody gives you a bad credit card, obviously you can go back after them and try to collect the money, which usually is not successful. And from what I hear from you now is that we would first be expected to go after that person for that money. Obviously, if they go into bankruptcy or they lose the business, they aren't a very good target for repayment. And therefore then, like a credit card, we would be stuck paying that credit card company, in this case, the agency back that money, correct?
That's the way the program from LACDC has been described to us.
And
it would be not, we would have to figure out how that would play out for future CDBG allocations.
Yeah. Well, that concerns me a little bit because on the one hand, I don't think I mind assisting businesses, but at the same time, I don't want to create a potential liability for this city down the road somewhere. And it seems that the rental assistance program does not contain any such types of penalties. Is that correct?
I'll double check with Mr. Gulick, but I don't, because it's just it's a payment without any type of conditions. But I'd ask Mr. Gulick to answer that question if he could.
That's correct. There's just the qualification occurs before we issue the payment to the landlord.
Okay. Another quick question, Mr. Gulick, I think you answered this, but I just want a clarification. So on the youth program, do we generally use the entire allocated amount every year, or do we? How has that been going the last couple 3 years?
The past 3 years, there have been some funds that have carried over, so all of the funds haven't been used, but Traditionally, we use up all the funds before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, and this year you anticipate some extra funds only because we haven't had any programs, is that correct?
Right, we haven't had any programs since March, so I think there's a balance of about 17,000 there.
So will the 17,000 be added on to the 31, or is that included in the 31?
Those funds will be available. If we want, we could also use those towards any new programs established.
Okay, so that's part of the new program amount that or the 2021 CDBG funds that would be included in that. I'm presuming then.
No, those funds won't be available. I just submitted the last close out the project today. So it'll probably take maybe a week or two for the funds to be available to use.
Okay, but that'll go into the bigger pot, not the 31,000.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, and Mayor, if I can really quick, that kind of goes to recommendation number 5, which is that staff, after the books close for this fiscal year, that we would come back and look at what funds may be remaining and what other loans get paid back and see whether we should reallocate that.
Well, again, it seems that most of this stuff can always be modified as we get through the programs. It appears anyway. Okay, those are all my questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open up public comment. I will begin by asking the city clerk if there are any public comment emails at this time.
No, Mayor, there are no email public comments.
Thank you. And if you want to go ahead and unmute our public out there who are listening in, is there anyone out there in the public who wishes to make wishes to say anything at this time on this matter? Okay, hearing no public comment, I will close public comment. And so now we are in a position for our final council comments and questions. And I think I'll go ahead and start with Mayor Pro Tem Yu at this time. We'll kind of.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I do have a follow-up question to my original question, which was, because the word repayment had mentioned several times, that's why I asked that question on small business. And I guess, am I correct to assume only if the business has failed within the year or failed to keep the employee for a year, that's when they have to repay? It's not a loan, right?
That's correct.
So if they do well, there is no expectation of them repaying.
I'll double check with Mr. Golick, but I think that is correct.
And then also, I just want to be clear, because when I look at that potential budget page, what we're really saying is that we're really putting everything we have under the 2021 CDBG budget and also the CARES Act COVID funding, everything that add up to the $469,800 budget. So we will not have other new programs next year, apart from this one.
Correct.
With the exception of the youth scholarship program.
Right. And that one, we were even debating whether that we'll be using that. So I just want to be clear in my mind. I'm still in favor of doing the business, but I think the mayor brought up something that in the light of the COVID-19 crisis, how many of these guys can survive and may not go out? That's a bit of a concern to me.
Okay, thank you. Member Viscar, any final comments?
There we go. I had pretty much the same questions Vince had, and the answer, I was unclear because I thought in listening to the news, there was a lot of talk about the business funding being actually a loan, and that at some point in time it had to be repaid. But I'm hearing you, Brian, you guys are saying no, that's not the case.
Correct, sir.
Okay. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sternquist?
Mike's off.
Okay, yeah, I think this is a tough one because I'd like to help everyone, but I know it's difficult. I actually think that there will be more rental assistance coming down the pipeline than there will be for small businesses. I think that the small businesses are, just struggling, and we've had so many that just recently opened up, and then a month later, this CV-19 shut them all down. I think a lot of property owners and banks are, reaching out to the people who are struggling with rent. So I think there's going to be more help for the renters, especially because the county and the state are really trying to combat homelessness. So I think they know that unless they put more money to keeping people in housing, the homeless situation is going to be so much worse, and they've struggled so much to even get it to where there have been some recent improvements. So I think the small business loans for our city might be the way to go right now.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mann?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Chavez. I do have one additional follow-up question after all the discussion. Are we, regarding the small business assistance program, are we absolutely bound by all the requirements of HUD? Or does the city have discretion in making it so that perhaps a larger pool of businesses would qualify for it? Because right now it doesn't seem like we have enough information to really understand, given these parameters, what are actually the businesses that would even qualify to meet all this criteria. I think that's what I'm struggling to kind of understand. Do we have any bearing on that?
If my prior experience is any help, it's pretty limited in terms of what the HUD guidelines provide and what LACDC does in administering those funds. There's not a ton of latitude, but I would defer to Mr. Golick if he agrees with that statement.
Yeah, you need to meet the national objectives. So the low moderate job retention, or there's also a creation program. So you need to meet that that requirement. There's no wiggle room on that.
Yeah, because I think when Mayor Pro Tem, you and Mayor Chavez brought up the point about small businesses where they're the only employee, I mean, that's a great point. That really puts people in a pickle. And I mean, if that kind of disqualifies like a large swath of businesses, then I know the pool is not that big, but I also kind of want to know that this is reaching the businesses that actually need the help. That would be my concern. But besides that, I'm in agreement with my fellow council members. I think if we were to pick one to focus on, I would also be in favor of focusing on the small business assistance program. I just still have some of those concerns that it seems like we need more time to iron out. With respect to the 20% being used for administrative costs, I actually feel strongly that we shouldn't use that for our administrative costs. I think I would be okay if we needed to bring in some form of consultant services to assist with it. I don't imagine, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't imagine a consultant is going to chew up 90 grand of that amount of money. I just think all in all, what I'm kind of looking for is, given the current changes in city operations and how we conduct business, remotely now without City Hall being physically open. I don't know the answer, but I kind of want to go out on a limb and say we might have staff that should be able to handle this as part of their regular duties, and that there's no need to we're already funding those positions through the adopted budget anyway. So I don't know if there's a way to make that a part of sort of the rest of the tasks that they're required to do. But I leave that up to the city manager. But my inclination is to not use all that for administrative costs and make the pool as large as possible for the small businesses that are applying.
Okay, thank you. Well, I thank you again, council members, for great comments and great questions. For me personally, I don't know that tonight's discussion, as well as the information that has been provided to us, at least personally, is enough for me to really make an intelligent, informed decision. I think there are still a lot of question marks on both of these programs. And I would like to get more information. One of the things I think that has been mentioned many times, of course, is on these administrative costs. I think we need to really, think about those since every dollar counts, especially when we're looking at two different types of programs. I think to really get a good handle on that and what we can or cannot do from a staff level. So I think I would like to see more information on that. Also, I would, and I appreciate staff, and I know they put a lot of work into it, and they've done a great job in explaining to us, both programs. But I know last time when we first brought this up, there was some discussion about, well, maybe we can help both. But I don't see, there's nothing in this report that gives us that third kind of graph or option, and that is, can we help both businesses and renters, and how does that look? And I'm sure we could take these numbers if we wanted to and compute it out ourselves, but personally, I would like to see that set up in this graph as has been done on each of these independently, rather than trying to do these figures, especially do these figures in my mind tonight. I don't know about other council members, but since our last discussion, I have heard comments and I have heard questions from both renters and from small businesses. Question, what are we going to do? Is there some way that we can, get some help from the city? And these have been from both businesses and from renters. And so I think they're both hurting out there. And to say, this is certainly something that I think is right for Temple City, since just the title alone, Small Business Assistance Program, I would hazard a guess that most of our businesses fall into that category of small business. We don't have any large industries for the most part in Temple City. We have small businesses ranging from sole proprietorships, to probably, this one level of five or less, or I think the next one was 50 or less or whatever it was. But, I would like to see a little bit more discussion or a little more guidance from HUD and what we can do and what we can do. There's been some good questions raised tonight that I don't think have been answered that will help us to make those decisions about, especially, well, what happens if this business goes under, or what happens? And I think Mayor Pro Tem and maybe another brought it up, and that it was, are we calling it a loan? Well, it's not a loan, but it is a loan if certain things happen. And I'd like to know a little bit more about what those things are. I want to see a little bit more in detail, what are these limits and what are these conditions, so that we know what we're getting ourselves into. Because as I said earlier, the last thing I want to do is to set us up for, we're not debt collectors. And as I said before, chasing money from businesses who go under, economically or file bankruptcy, your options are very limited in recovering any money. And so that means to me, at least from what I've seen so far, that we're going to be on the hook for that money. And so, again, I don't want to eliminate businesses just for that reason alone, because I don't know that we have enough information to really make that decision. So obviously, we've been asked tonight to give some direction, and you know, we'll hear from council as to what you want to do. But you know, I just have some concerns. I think there's been some good questions, some good comments made today that I think, at least from what I'm hearing, at least from a few of the council members, you know, we would like a little bit more information before we make a final determination. But again, if my colleagues, you know, wish to move forward on this now and feel they have enough information, obviously that's up to you. So with that, are there any other further comments or any other questions by anyone at this time?
Mr. Mayor, maybe a question.
Go ahead,
to the manager, Mr. Collins. If we were to ask staff to come back with a more detailed recommendations that the mayor has articulated, with how much time do we have? Is there any time that's
I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, there's a little echo in the background. I heard that you were asking, is there a time limit in terms of expending these funds? I believe there is, but I think we have enough time to come back to you for the next meeting to delineate that out, but I'll defer to Mr. Gulick just to make sure.
okay?
I believe the funds need to be used by the end of June 2022, I believe.
No, that gives us a little bit of time.
We have some time.
Okay, well, I think this is a big decision, and I think we owe it to both our renters and to our business to make a good, well-informed decision. And again, I don't want to, I'm not saying that staff has not done a good job. I think you've done a great job in getting this information, because frankly, it sounds like you're not getting that information. But since we do have some time, and of course, obviously, the quicker we can get the money into the hands of the people who need it, the better. But I think we still need to do our due diligence to make a decision on who's going to get it and how much that's going to be. And frankly, I think it needs some further thought process. If it's one more meeting or whatever, I think you know, we should be in a better position to do that. So, all right.
Mayor Chavez, can I add a comment? Just from hearing everyone's comments and discussions, it seems like at least there's some consensus that we should be focusing on the small business assistance program, right? Would it be possible for staff to kind of, because I heard Mr. Gulick mention, or was it Mr. Cook mentioned that it would take about a month for staff to really set up the program before it can be implemented. So is it possible to simultaneously try to address a lot of the questions that council brought up tonight, and also work towards setting up a temporary business assistance program with sort of like, you know, fill in the blanks kind of thing, where the unknowns that council has yet to really make direction on, you know, the grant amount or whatnot, that can be kind of assembled. But all these other components that really make up the program, I presume that's part of the time that needs to be spent is putting all that together. I guess what I'm trying to say is I hate to delay this to our next meeting, and then staff will have to take another month to put all that together. Is it possible? I guess this is a question for staff. Is it possible to kind of do two of those things concurrently?
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I agree with William. I felt that the consensus was that at least three of us had an inclination to move towards the small business loans. I mean, I'd hate to delay it any further. I know that, there's people that are going to need assistance. I mean, there's landlords probably out there that are suffering. I think we're in a place because it's not a lot of money, but I feel more comfortable that if staff is able, to incur some of the work, that we might have an additional $50,000. But I think I'm ready to, go forward with a rental assistance program. I'm thinking that's what I heard from Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Mann.
No, I think.
No,
well, first,
I thought you said small business.
Small business.
I mean, small business, yes.
Okay, one thing, and I just want to make clear that the small business assistance program is not going to help landlords. Okay, the rent.
No. What I was saying is that, I mean, that's another group of people similar to, people who need help, but we cannot help everyone. So my inclination would be to not help a landlord program or help the rental assistance at this time, because I think there really is going to be funding coming down the line for rental assistance, more than we've heard right now. I think the challenge is going to be because there are, so many small businesses that really need immediate help, where the rental assistance, there's already assistance from the landlords that are required to help them, you put it off, but there's really nothing in place right now that a small business owner has really had access to. Every small business owner in Temple City, I know, said that the bureaucracy for trying to get a small loan through SBA and the programs in place, they have not been successful. I also want to suggest that staff and our city manager reach out to the cities of El Monte and possibly Pomona, who have, excuse me one moment, I'm sorry, somebody's moving a ladder in my house, have already put some CDBG funds into small business programs. So they've been in place for at least 3 weeks. So we might get some information from them as to the complexity of it, and are they using staff? Are they using a consultant to do so? But I kind of felt like I heard that there were 3 of us that were ready to move forward with a small business program, but maybe we can revisit that question.
Okay, well, I would just follow up on Councilmember Mann's suggestion, and I think it's a good one, and I would just expand that perhaps a little bit. And I agree with Councilmember Sternquist that we need to get moving as soon as possible, because obviously the sooner we get the money in the hands of people who need it, the better. I would suggest that, again, I think there are some open questions here as to what the final decision is to make. I would suggest that not only come back with information tonight, but start working on details of both small business assistance program and the renter assistance program, and get those ready to roll out. There are things that can be done now so that we don't have, when we eventually do make a decision, whether it's tonight or whether it's in 2 weeks, be ready to go. And so again, City Manager Cook, if you believe that you have the staff to at least start working on that, I think that would be a good idea. So, City Manager Cook there?
I'm here, sir.
right.
Wait for the direction of the council.
Okay, there's been no motion made, so of course I'm not asking you to make a decision one way or another. So, all right. So at this point, we're waiting for a motion, then I guess. And,
Mr. Mayor, I think we heard from Member Viscaria.
yeah, we did.
Well, actually, no, I've been trying to interject myself.
Okay,
Uh,
go ahead.
we're not all in agreement here. I think we get more bang for our buck with the rental assistance program. I think the amount that's there isn't going to do a hell of a lot for the small businesses. It's not a lot of money, and we're a city of families, and I think it's going to have an immediate impact. The landlords are prohibited from evicting anybody, but that doesn't mean that 3 or 4 or 5 months down the road they can't try and get their money back for the months that renters missed, which is going to keep a lot of people in a bad place. So I'm just saying, the assumption was being made that everybody wanted to do the small business loans or help. And no, I would support
Councilmember Viscara, I shared that there were 3 of us. I didn't imply that you were on board because I wasn't sure what your stance was.
Okay, and I, at this point, rather than counting votes, since we don't have a motion on the table, again, I think there's something good about both programs. I think there's, obviously the rental assistance program not only will help the renters keep their roof over their head, but also will presumably put money back into the pockets of the landlords who are losing rent. So you've got two groups that are benefiting there. And of course, we know that, as mentioned many times before, we have many small businesses in Temple City who certainly can use the assistance as well. With that in mind, is there any other?
Yeah, Mayor Chavez. Could I maybe just speaking out loud here, hearing everyone's comments, perhaps the direction council can provide tonight to staff is kind of similar to what you were bringing up, kind of expanding on the my previous comment, is maybe directing staff to work simultaneously on both programs so that by the time council makes a decision that it's ready to go, because at least that's my understanding, that it's going to take a month to put all the elements of either program together. So maybe I'll just ask that question again to Mr. Gulick or Mr. Cook. Did I hear that correctly? That after council makes some sort of decision, you will need a month to administratively put the program together before it can launch?
That's what we briefly discussed internally. Again, haven't completely vetted that out, but that's what we've discussed. To take about a month or so to get that.
Yeah, so I mean, working off of that assumption, obviously we have a lot of unanswered questions, but perhaps the way to save time is to have that in place so that by the time we meet next time to actually give a very specific direction on either program or a combination of the two or whatever it may be, then we're not waiting another month after that. I'm just thinking of the timing because we're in, what day is it? We're May 19th. So presumably our next meeting, if I'm looking at the calendar, is June 2nd. So that's 2 weeks. And I think in times of like these, if we can show as government that we're a bit more nimble than what other people may think of us, that we can kind of move faster, I would be very much in favor of us trying to do so.
Okay, is that a motion?
If Mr. City Attorney will allow that long sentence to be a motion, I guess to paraphrase, maybe I like to make a motion to direct staff to explore both the rental assistance program and the small business assistance program, so that by the time council meets next to discuss whatever direction is given, that program will be ready to go approximately a month from today.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any objection? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, may you take a roll call, please?
Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist,
Yes.
thank you. Councilmember Viscara,
Yes,
We
Thank
heard
you.
your dog. We hear from you.
that wasn't my dog.
I
Okay.
thought, Councilmember,
My dog is well behaved.
Mayor, and you,
Well, yes, too, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor
Ah.
Chavez.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so that motion passes. Thank you. That took a little longer, but it's good discussions, good questions. And, obviously, I think, obviously a very important matter that will be addressed sooner than later. So, okay, so now we are ready to move on.
Mr. Mayor, may I just comment
Yeah.
that just a second, something that was said. I think it was Councilmember Mann who said that I think it's this time of crisis. I think it's an imperative for us as a city government to show the public what we can do. That we can, cut through red tapes. We can work hard. We can work collaboratively and come up with a way to help our constituents. So,
Well, and that goes for both council and for staff, I think. And
Yeah.
if anything, we've shown that we do work towards those goals, and I don't have any doubt that will happen here as well. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so now we are.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Mayor, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah. Go ahead,
There's a
Councilman.
protocol for taking a break.
We can take one. In fact, give me a minute because why don't we introduce the next item, because I believe that Councilmember Sternquist has something to say or will need to recuse herself from this next item. And then why don't we take a break? That way she doesn't have to wait for us to come back. So we'll look on to Primrose Park update and finalizing events. Before we get to this agenda matter, Councilmember Sternquist.
Yes, I'd like to recuse myself from this item.
Okay, all right, thank you. So that will be it. So why don't we take a break? I have 9:32. Why don't we come back here in about 10 minutes and we will finish off the meeting, okay? So
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
thank you.
Good night, Cindy.
Good night.
yes,
Yep.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, great. All right, so we will now move on to item C, the Primrose Park update and finalizing. Councilmember Sternquist has recused herself for conflict of interest reasons, and so we will now turn it over. City Manager Cook, are you going to be doing that? Parks and Recreation. We have
Mr.
Adam.
Matsumoto will be giving the presentation, but I'll start off with a quick introduction. First,
Go
I'd
ahead.
like to thank the standing committee, Mayor Pro Tem Yu and Councilmember Mann. What you're going to see today is a product of the collaboration between the standing committee staff to address also some of the concerns expressed by council going forward in order to deliver a park that I think the community will be very proud of at the end of the day. Mr. Matsumoto will go over some of the key aspects, timelines, delivery, those kind of things. Also, just so you know, with us as well is David Volz. He's in the background right now as well. He is the architect of the project as well. And I don't see Mr. Kair, Ali Kair, who with Transtech. As you know, Transtech also provides for us some project management services. In an effort to expedite this project as quickly as we can, Mr. Kair is helping staff with assisting with the project management of this effort as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Matsumoto.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Cook. Good evening, Mayor Chavez and members of the City Council. I guess if we're going to have a little bit later meeting, it's nice to do it from the comfort of our own home. So I'll go ahead and get started. So as City Manager Cook had mentioned, we'll be going over the highlights of the grant today, reviewing the standing committee feedback, the draft project schedule, one-phase construction, park design elements, alternative park amenities, and then we'll be seeking City Council recommendations. So just to give some background information on the grant is a Prop 68 grant funded through the state. The city was awarded a little over $2.9 million for the Primrose project. The performance period of the grant started back in July 1 of 2018 and concludes June 30th of 2020. Our target date for completion of the project is March 30th, 2022, or the completion deadline, I should say. And that's when the project needs to be completed, which is mandated by the grant guidelines. Just some additional background. The state received over 478 total grant applications. Of those 478 applications, Temple City was one of only 62 projects awarded. The city itself was one of only 9 projects awarded in LA County. Recently, as of May 14th, city staff did meet with state grant administrators, and they've given every indication that they are wanting to proceed and move forward with those grant projects. So I know we are, in a time of COVID-19, but the state has indicated at this point that they are very motivated to move forward with projects. One last item is that we did confirm with the state that reimbursements can be requested throughout the duration of the grant period. So we don't actually have to wait until the completion of the project to seek reimbursement, but we can do that throughout the timeline of the project. Next is an overview of the required park amenities. All of these items are required amenities that are mandated by the state grant. Indicates the playground areas, group picnic area, art opportunities, everything that's listed here. One of the new things that we just wanted to highlight for the City Council was the state did mandate and require sustainability amenities, which would include bioswales, rain sensors, evapotranspiration controllers, as well as an inclusion of 2 level 2 EV charge stations, which would be for electric vehicles. Next, we'll take a look at the draft project schedule. So hopefully by the end of tonight's meeting, we will be able to finalize the park concept design. The next phase would be completing the design elements and plan check process, and that would take us through August 2020 of this year. Next would be the mandatory 30-day bid process, completing in October of this year, with construction hopefully starting by the end of this year in December and running through June of 2021. That gives us an estimated completion deadline or timeline between August and November of 2021, which is well ahead of the grant deadline, which is in March of 2022. So we did want to allow ourselves buffer for any instances of project delay. So we didn't want to cut that timeline too close. So we were able to accomplish that with the draft project schedule that you see before you. Next, we'll move on to the standing committee feedback. which is included completing the project in one phase, incorporating mid-century design elements, providing direction on a restroom storage option, and then location if that option is approved. Some background on the one-phase construction project. There was some initial discussion about phasing the project in 2 phases, where the parking lot would be constructed first to try to maintain the same amount of parking that exists in that location. Based on a variety of factors, one of those of which are trying to move the project forward as quickly as possible, completing the project at a lower cost, eliminating impacts of the new parking lot with the heavy equipment that would be needed to build the park section. Those were all various factors in the feedback from the standing committee for a one-phase construction project. So on our end, the staff would explore then ways to mitigate those parking impacts during the construction, since it would not be, at least at this point, unless we receive different direction from council, as a 2-phase project. Additional feedback was to incorporate the mid-century design elements that you see at City Hall and the public parking lot at Temple City Boulevard and Workman Avenue. That would incorporate minimalist design, utilizing Roman-style bricks, but having a cohesive style and look throughout various city facilities would be the goal with this project. Now, we did confirm with the state that as long as as part of the project we are meeting all the required elements, we can add and modify the project, with new elements, as long as we're maintaining all the required elements of the park. So it was brought up at the council meeting initially when the concept design was approved for submission for the grant, the discussion of a restroom. So we wanted to explore that topic a little bit more with the council and provide some options. So we'll take a look at a custom design versus a prefabricated restroom/storage option. If that's something that the council is interested in, then we would look at determining a location for that facility. And then just one last item regarding the restroom and storage area option is that we actually do have the ability to add that into the $2.9 million grant amount. So we would be able to request from the state that this be included as part of the Prop 68 grant, and then they would review that and potentially approve that for inclusion. So the additional funding for this could potentially be absorbed through the $2.9 million grant. So I'm looking at the options of a custom versus prefabricated facility. You can see the pros and cons of each of the 2 facilities, as well as example photos for a custom versus a prefabricated facility. Build time is approximately the same. Cost is, slightly skewed more towards a custom restroom. Design options with a custom obviously are unlimited. With a prefabricated restroom, you do have more limited design options, but they can be customized too from an exterior standpoint. And then just one final item would be the build quality for a custom restroom is dependent upon the contractor, whereas you have a little bit more consistent build quality with the prefabricated restroom option.
Director Matsumoto, I have a quick question on the custom versus fabricated.
Sure.
Are they approximately the same size, or would one be larger than the other, or is that to be determined?
They would be approximately the same size. The park itself is a small park. The property is 1 acre, but the park itself is about a half-acre park. With a small park, the recommendation, if a restroom would be included, would be a single stall restroom. And the footprint on that would be a roughly 10 by 15 foot structure. So it would be a single stall restroom.
So it would be nothing like the two photos that you have in your report that are before us right now, because these seem to be fairly large buildings.
Correct. You're correct. We were using it more so as a style examples as opposed to actual dimensions. But you are correct. These are, in terms of size, much larger than what would be actually placed on the park.
All right. Thank you.
Next up, we have what was submitted with the grant. So this is the grant design that the state had, or the park design that the grant or state had approved with the grant. As you can see, it has all the amenities that were previously listed, as well as what the council had approved going forward for submission. What I am including, and again, this is based on further council direction, is what a location could look like if a restroom was something that the council would like to recommend as an add-on for the park. So you can see it in the magnification where that restroom would lie. We would be able to still maintain the concept design integrity. By adding on the restroom, it doesn't significantly change the look or the feel of the design. And it does add on that restroom by the main entrance into the park from the parking lot. So that would be one of the options for a location if a restroom is decided to be added on. And again, during this time, we feel it's prudent to talk about alternative funding sources in the event that the project does exceed the $2.9 million grant. There's the AQMD funding source that could offset the electrical vehicle charge stations. We have confirmed that Measure W, the Safe Clean Water Program, may be utilized for the sustainability elements. And then Measure A could, the Safe Clean Park Neighborhood and Beaches funding source could offset general park costs. So we don't anticipate, even with the add-on on the restroom, that we would exceed the $2.9 million grant fund. In consultation with the DBD, Mr. Volz, and TransTech and Mr. Kayer, we feel that we have a very robust budget of $2.9 million to not only include all the existing amenities, but potentially add on the restroom amenity without exceeding the $2.9 million. But this is more of an exercise to, have pivot options in the event that we do see a increase in those costs beyond the $2.9 million grant. At this point, that concludes my presentation. We are looking for City Council for recommendations on the three following items: direction on the restroom storage option, location if approved, and then approval of the final concept design. I am here as well as Mr. Volz, Mr. Kayer, as well as the Parks Manager, Steve Lawson, to answer any questions that the council may have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we will start with council questions, and I'm sure we're not going to get too much from Councilmember Mann and Mayor Pro Tem Yu, since they've been living this for quite a long time, but certainly we'll be given the opportunity to do that. But why don't we go ahead and start with our newbie, that is Councilmember Vizcarra. Do you have any questions regarding what you've seen so far? You have to unmute yourself. Need to unmute.
I'll get used to it.
I know. All right.
Actually, I don't have any at this point. I like the idea of the restroom and storage. I think you probably need it there. And really, that's about it. I haven't been involved enough to make any intelligent criticisms or anything else.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'll follow the lead of the others.
Yeah, I know that staff has kind of tried to bring you up to speed, so thank you. All right, Councilmember Mann, any questions for staff at this time?
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, any questions?
I don't have any questions either. We've been working on this. We met multiple times on this already. So
Yeah, that's what I just have a quick question. So I know that it's been referred to as direction on the restroom storage option. So I'm assuming that whatever style we choose, there will be a storage component to either of those or both of those. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor Chavez, that's correct.
And
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, and the storage would really be more of a small, maybe slightly larger closet, just for hand tools and things like that. So we're not looking at utilizing it for large equipment, which I think is very appropriate for the size of the park.
So probably for some small tools and supplies and things like that, cleaning supplies.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes, bathroom supplies, things of that nature.
Now, if we didn't have a bathroom, would there be a storage facility recommended, or would there be no storage at all?
At this point, with the design, we don't have storage included if the restroom option was not added on. It still works for us in terms of the management of the park without having on-site storage. Because it is a small facility, we would be able to bring in on a regular basis, any type of equipment or supplies that are needed. So it's nice to have, but it's not a need.
All right, thank you. Okay, that's all the questions I have. So I will now open up public comment. I will first ask the city clerk to check for any public comment emails on this matter.
Thank you, Mayor. There are no public comments emailed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead and open up the microphones, those who are listening in. Do we have any comments from those listening in on tonight's meeting regarding this item? Hearing none, I will close public comment. And so now we have reached the point to have any final questions or comments. And I'll again start with Councilmember Viscar. Any final comments or questions on this item? Can't hear you.
Yeah, I know, I did it again.
That's all right.
I have no questions or comments.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad we're putting that park in.
Good comment. Councilmember Mann.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Chavez. Yeah, as Mayor Pro Tem you alluded to, we've met a couple of times in the last month, and I really want to thank all of our staff. Director Matsumoto, Mr. Steve Lawson, our city manager, Ali with TransTech, and of course Dave Volz for answering all of the standing committee's questions and being very flexible and adaptable with everything we were throwing at them. I think the question of the restroom kind of came back, but I think staff did a great job in asking whether that could be incorporated into the project and covered by the grant. And so I think that makes it, from the standing committee standpoint, an easy decision to make, but obviously the final decision will be up to full council as to whether the restroom should be added in and where that location would be. And in Mr. Matsumoto's presentation, the location that he highlighted was also the same location that we discussed at our last standing committee meeting. Personally, again, as I've stated in the past standing committee meeting, I'm not much of a designer myself, but looking at the two, if I see a $50,000 cost difference between the custom and the prefab, if it looks better and it could be incorporated into the grant, then I'm more inclined to look at look to see what the custom one would look like, and that would be my preference is that one over to prefab. And I'm trying to check what other, there were a couple of things that staff wanted us to provide direction on. Scrolling through my report here. Well, actually, no, that's the main thing, right? The restroom / storage type and the location. So I'll paraphrase. I concur with the location that was shown in the presentation. And my preference is leaning towards the custom, but would be open to the prefab if there was, I guess, maybe some compelling reason to do so.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Yu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would echo what Councilmember Mann said. Really great commendation to Mr. City Manager, Mr. Matsumoto, Mr. Lawson, and definitely Mr. Volz doing such a great job. I just want to put it in perspective, you know, because grants, we don't get grants every day. And I think for all our audience out there, I like to really put that the success of this grant. Oh, actually, Mr. Kayak too. I don't want to forget him as well. Just to put things in perspective, we are actually getting the park for free, in essence, the construction of it. Yes, the city did invest in the buying of the piece of property, but it's a wonderful job that we can leverage grants to get the park improvement all paid for. Put it in perspective, LA County also was awarded a grant during the same exercise. But that was a $20 million pool project that I have. And we got a $3 million grant as well. Mr. Volz, for a $3 million park, got a $3 million grant. So it's very impressive. I just want to say, you know, it's for those of us who are in the business, there's something that really need to celebrate. Having said that, I am also with Councilmember Min that if for the low price difference between the custom restroom storage versus a prefab, I definitely want to see a custom design because I think it's a great opportunity for Mr. Volz to create a design that's can integrate a fencing, gate, whatever feature he come up with. But rather than something, you know, perhaps a little more foreign, like a prefab that kind of like dropped onto the park. So for the low price difference, I think we should pursue the custom design because for 60 years, we haven't built another park in Temple City. I think we can definitely afford the extra 50 grand. And then the other thing that I wanted to comment on staff was that they actually included in the budgeting some monies for art opportunities. So while Councilmember Min and I have been kind of working on perhaps the construction end of things, perhaps this is the time, Mr. Mayor, you may want to think about having a art standing committee or ad hoc committee to work on some art opportunities.
Okay, good suggestion. Thank you. Okay, well, you know, I want to first thank, of course, everybody who has been involved in this project. You know, what impresses me the most is the talent that was in this group that put this together. Mr. Volz, thank you so much for all your work, and we've heard from Mayor Pro Tem Yu about your involvement in this, and thank you so much for what you've done. Of course, Ali Khair from TransTech has been working with the city for a long time and to continue to do a fantastic job. Mayor Pro Tem Yu, Councilmember Mann, I know you guys have taken this on yourselves for the last, 2 years now, and you've done a fantastic job shepherding this through the system. And of course, our staff, Director Matsumoto, Mr. Lawson, our city manager Cook, what a fantastic job. And I love the design. I love everything about it that you guys have done. And I think our city will be able to enjoy a fantastic park, and albeit a small one, but obviously it's going to fit well into the neighborhood. You know, what impresses me the most is that I didn't realize we were one out of 478 applications in this process. That's quite that's quite an achievement for our little city, and so it's that is awesome. I too agree with my fellow council members that the custom restroom, if we're going to go that route, I think makes more sense. It's a custom park. We might as well have a custom restroom. And for the difference in price, it certainly makes a lot more sense. I think we can add those little amenities that will make the use of this park a lot better, a lot easier, and certainly a lot better for staff to maintain. So I think I would agree there. And again, just thank you for the bathroom. I was probably the most vocal of everyone I remember, and it's I really appreciate it, and thanks for including that in there as well. So with that, I will now go ahead and entertain a motion. Mayor Pro Tem or Councilmember Mann, would you like to make a motion?
I'm trying to think of the specific. Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
All right, go ahead.
Mayor Chavez, I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to proceed with the custom restroom and storage design for the park at the location shown in staff's presentation, and to approve the next steps in design and the bidding process.
Okay. Do we have a second? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, we have a second. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any objection? Hearing none, Madam City Clerk, if you can take roll call, please.
Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Vizcarra,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Yu,
Yes.
Mayor Chavez.
Yes. Okay, been unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, ladies. I appreciate your help, and have a good evening.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Go.
Perhaps you don't need to decide tonight, but perhaps you would consider the idea of forming a ad hoc committee for the arts.
I did write that down. Thank you for reminding me, and I figured I would address that when we get to item 13.
Okay.
So we have a few ad hoc positions to fill. I think that's a very good suggestion, and I have a perfect council member in mind right now, and I'm sure we that is.
That's in time.
Just in time, yes. He has some experience in this area, I believe. So, okay, well, thank you.
Timing is everything.
Yep, that's certainly right. Okay, so we will now move on to item number 10, our new business, and we have none. And now we will move on to item 11, update from our city manager.
I did.
Go ahead.
There we go.
There
Thank
you
you,
go.
Mayor Chavez, members of the council. Thank you for the previous item as well. Thank you to the collaboration with our standing committee as well. They met, we kind of pushed, and they were very flexible with their time and all of their comments, and a real great collaborative team effort between the standing committee staff and everybody. So thank you to all of them as well for related to Primrose Park. Welcome back, Councilmember Vizcarra. 6 years ago, Councilmember Vizcarra and former Councilmember Bloom were visiting a city in the southeast, Southgate, vetting me, and was with the council at the time. So welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
With the COVID-19 regular update, you've seen some of the changes that the health department and Dr. Ferrer have imposed and what that has meant for curbside activity related to retail, curbside delivery, as we already have related to restaurants. We are still waiting for further direction from the public health department as it relates to office buildings, those kind of things moving forward. And we'll be seeing as that's going forward, as this new health order does not have an end date. I know that Supervisor Barger had issued a press release today talking about July 4th as a date, but the actual health order itself does not have an expiration date or an end date yet, as it will be driven, as she has said, by the data and what the matrix are in terms of how things will open and the order that they will open in. So we've been working, we've got a few questions from a few businesses in town in the last week or so since last Friday. We've been working with those businesses, making sure that they're getting referred and working collaboratively with the health department, dog grooming, a few of those individual businesses that have been out there. No major incidents to report in terms of either violations or struggles with businesses in implementing or abiding by the health order. Also, just general observations as I drive around the city with the parks. We do have some people gather occasionally, and they are dispersed when they meet certain criteria of, gathering together or having groups. But most, we've had no issues of any citations or anything related to that, related to the health order. So that's good on that front. We will be meeting next week related to the admin leave policy and what we'll be doing going forward. Staff is working on some plans as we move forward with the next phase. But again, that will be directed by what the Dr. Ferrer and the health order dictate to us and how we operate and how we're operating on a go-forward basis. Lastly, the Las Tunas project, which was nighttime work almost all of last week. The actual grind and overlay and new pavement is done. I actually drove it today. Striping is actually is in progress as well. So hopefully that project will be closed out in the next week and a half or so. But thank you to Mr. Kair, TransTech, and All American Asphalt for doing a great job. And actually, we'll be coming back to the council. If I was to describe our next budget is really going to be about a back to basics budget. And one of those back to basic things will be doing road projects like that. And with the success that we've found with the nighttime work with the Las Tunas project, one of the things we'll be proposing coming back to you is doing nighttime work for the rest of Las Tunas as well, and seeing some other major corridors that we can assist with, especially when we have funding for that kind of roadway work. We have actually special funding that we can't use on residential streets or anywhere else, so we're gonna come back with those. The COVID-19 update as of today, so that's it from me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Right. Item 12, update from our city attorney, Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Mayor, council members, no update beyond what the city manager said. The overwhelming legal issue of the last 7 weeks has been COVID-19, coronavirus, the health orders, and your city manager has given you a great report as to where the city is on that. Obviously, we're monitoring it from a legal perspective, the way that Brian is monitoring it from an operational perspective. We have some things that we'll be discussing in the month of June with respect to your own local emergency order and some of the other actions that we have taken as a city, but don't need to go into any detail on those tonight. Just please know that they'll be coming back to you. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you. Okay, we will now move to item 13, and that is our, first of all, do we have any council reports regarding any ad hoc or standing committees? I don't believe we do, but are there anyone have a report? No. Okay, so with that out of the way, we do need to make some new appointments as a result of Councilmember Fish no longer with us. We have some vacancies to fill. Before I start filling the vacancies, I just need to ask our city clerk if the same information that you provided to me was provided to all the council members as far as the agencies and the vacancies.
No, sir, but I can email it to them.
Okay, well, there aren't that many, so I just wanted to know before I go over them. So there's a couple of them that we need to fill, and so I'll just go down the list. First of all, I'd like to know before I start making the appointments, if there's anybody that's particularly interested in any of these positions, feel free to step forward and let me know your feelings one way or another. So first one is we have the Camellia Festival. We need a city liaison on the Camellia Festival. Is there anybody, any of those who are here interested in taking on that position? And I'm not sure if Councilmember Sternquist expressed an interest in any of these. I did not hear from her, but since she's not here, I can certainly appoint her and she won't have any objection, but I wouldn't do that necessarily. Okay, well, hearing nobody rushing to the forefront there, I don't mind being the liaison to the Camellia Festival. So I will go ahead and pencil my name in there, and so that will take care of that position. The next, go ahead,
Mayor.
Yes.
I was just about to say I need to start earning my pay, so I'd be willing to take that one on.
Okay, so do you want to do the Camellia Festival?
Yeah.
Okay, great, appreciate it. All right, so we'll put in Councilmember Vizcarra as the city liaison to the Camellia Festival. Okay, great, thank you very much. The next one is the San Gabriel Valley Humane Society. Is there anybody that's interested in that one? I don't know. I've never served on that. I don't know what the time commitment is.
The Humane Society, because I think I'm one of the alternates or the.
You mind stepping up to be the delegate or the city liaison to that?
You're talking about the Humane Society, right?
Yeah, the Humane Society.
Yeah, I've always thought I was the liaison.
Okay,
but
well, I have a blank. So that's okay. Well, we'll put you in anyway then, okay?
Yeah, that's
right.
That's fine. That's fine.
Councilmember Mann will then be the city liaison for the San Gabriel Humane Society, or at least we'll continue on with that. Okay, the next one we have is the Contract Cities Association. The Councilmember Fish was the city delegate and Councilmember Sternquist was the alternate. Okay, so is there anybody interested in being the delegate to Contract Cities, which is of course, the association that meets yearly, of course, not this year, but out at Indian Wells.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I know, Councilmember Vizcarra, in the past, you've enjoyed attending that, so that I think that would be an awesome one for you to do as well. Okay, so we'll put Councilmember Vizcarra as the Contract Cities. Okay, next one is the Upper San Gabriel Valley Water District. I was the alternate on that, so I will go ahead and unless somebody is interested, I will go ahead and put myself as the city delegate to the Upper San Gabriel Water Valley District. Is there anybody that would like to be the alternate on that?
I'll be the alternate.
Okay, all right, so we'll have Councilmember Vizcarra will be the alternate to that. Clean Power Alliance, maybe I should save that for the last, but we might as well get that out of the way right away. All right, the Clean Power Alliance, we need a director. The alternate director is Councilmember Mann, and I am the second alternate director. And I know that Councilmember Mann has already expressed a concern regarding the attendance at the meetings, which may, I believe, occurred during the day. Is that correct, Mr. Cook?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think last I heard they've started moving some meetings to the morning. I can't recall, but they're usually the meetings run about 2 hours or so. I'm not sure about the recent ones, so it's a challenge for me to make it with during the daytime. Yeah.
Okay.
What do they do with you?
That's what I haven't briefed you on yet, sir. So I'll take some time to brief you on that one.
All right.
Are you volunteering for that one, Councilmember Vizcarra?
I have no idea what it does.
Well, then that's a good position to be in. So, you know, we'll go ahead and put you in there, and keep in mind that you have 2 backups, and I believe City Manager Cook may attend those meetings as well, correct?
I can attend
And
those
what's it,
meetings.
what,
I
what is
can't
it called
serve.
again?
Clean
David.
Power Alliance, it is now the electricity provider, even though Edison provides the distribution system. Clean Power Alliance is a joint powers authority started by the County of Los Angeles with about 26 other agencies, cities throughout Southern California that actually buy renewable energy and actually distribute it. So your Edison bill right now, your electricity bill is actually being paid directly to Clean Power Alliance, this joint powers authority, rather than to Edison. Edison still owns the poles, the lines, everything that gets the energy to your house or to your business, but the energy itself is actually purchased through the Clean Power Alliance.
You got it? You got all that? One of the
Yeah, I
nice
think so.
things is that these meetings can be attended online as well, correct?
That's correct. They have.
Yeah,
been doing-
that's correct. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think between the three of us, between Councilmember Vizcarra, who we will designate as the director, there are also alternate directors that can fill in time to time as well. So you're not alone on it.
What day of the week do they occur?
You know, I'm not sure.
Thursdays.
Thursday. Yeah.
I can't make it.
Yeah, well, we know that's the golf day, but we'll try to figure out the meetings another time. Okay.
Okay.
Southern California Association of Government, okay? The delegate is Councilmember Sternquist. We need an alternate for that organization. Anybody want to jump on that one? Don't all say it at once. Okay. All right.
I did about 3 years with them.
Do you want to be the
No,
alternate? No, you don't. Okay. I will go ahead and take that alternate position since Councilmember Sternquist usually takes all the work on that anyway. So I'm sure she'll be able to do that. Yes. Go ahead.
I'm gonna sign off my iPad. I'll get on with my phone because my
Okay.
iPad's right.
All right. Well, we're almost done, so we should be okay. Thanks. Okay. Foothill Transit. All right.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Foothill Transit Zone. The alternate right now is Councilmember Mann. We need a city delegate to that. And so Councilmember Mann, are you interested in moving up and being promoted to the delegate for the Foothill?
I appreciate the offer, but I think I might be better suited to be an alternate for that role.
Okay. All right. Anybody else that would like to be a part of that?
This is for Foothill Transit?
Foothill Transit, correct. You would be working.
They meet during the day, though.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, but
during the
Yeah, they meet during the day. That might be a bit of an issue for me too.
I thought Cynthia was involved with them.
She sits on the board. She's president of the Foothill Transit District. But this is our delegate to the Foothill Transit Zone.
And she's an appointee of Supervisor Barger. She's not an appointee. She's not the delegate of the city. She's actually the delegate appointed by the county supervisor. So we still have our other delegate position as the city on that. So that's why Councilmember Fish was on the board and Councilmember Sternquist was on the board, because Councilmember Sternquist's position is actually technically not a city position.
And there's an expectation that each city provides somebody?
Yes.
Yes.
How often do they meet?
I believe it's twice a month, but I'd have to double check for you, sir.
Are they daytime or afternoons or mornings or what?
Mixed. I would too bad Councilmember Sternquist is not on. I think it's in the morning, but I can double check.
I attended those meetings before. I think it's in the morning.
Yeah, I believe they're in the morning.
And of what day of the week is that?
Peggy, do you have it on your list of items?
Yes, I'm looking it up. Give me just a minute, please.
Okay, well, she's looking that up. the next one is the San Gabriel Valley Council of Government, okay, which is COG. The delegate currently is Councilmember Sternquist. I'm not sure, but I guess we need either an alternate or I believe it's an alternate. Is that correct?
Alternate, yes. Councilmember Sternquist is the delegate.
Okay. Anybody interested in being alternate to the? Again, I don't know what the time on that either. Perhaps we
I
should,
think they meet during the day.
No, they meet at night. The
Perhaps-
COG?
had Councilmember Sternquist rejoin us for this item, but I
I
don't know.
always met at night when I was gone.
Okay.
By the way, the Foothill Transit meetings are on Fridays, usually in the morning.
I can do that.
Okay, so you're okay with the Foothill Transit?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put Councilmember Viscara on the Foothill Transit. So the last one we have then is the COG. We do have a delegate, Councilmember Sternquist. We're looking for an alternate delegate to the COG. If nobody is interested, I can put myself in there. I doubt that I'll ever have to attend those meetings, and Councilmember Sternquist usually will be attending. She has.
Isn't she an officer?
She was, I believe she's, Brian, is she the former president or still president?
No, it's actually still president of the COG.
Okay, so,
I thought so.
so she's usually there, so I guess.
So you won't have to go.
I don't think so, but that's okay. Okay, so I will put myself in as the alternate or the city delegate behind Councilmember Sternquist. I think it's similar to like my position at APIA where I have to be the delegate to be on the board. And so I think the same is with her as well. Okay, for that position. Okay.
Oh, by the way, I just forwarded to Councilmember Viscara the Foothill Transit board schedule for 2020.
Okay, great. Thank you for. Okay, so the last.
Is it email or what?
Yeah, I sent it to your email. But when you could take a look at it later, you'll see all the dates, and they're all on Fridays.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last order of business here would be to form a new art ad hoc committee, basically to discuss future art components in our Primrose Park. I think it's a great idea by Mayor Pro Tem Yu. And so I know that Councilmember Viscara in his previous life served as on the art ad hoc committee, and I was wondering if you would mind serving on that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, do we have anybody else that would like to join that? I would actually prefer, if you don't mind, either Mayor Pro Tem Yu or Councilmember Mann, since you guys have been so closely involved with the park project, that it might be a good idea to be part of that as well, just to complete your vision of what that park should look like. So if either of you gentlemen would like to serve on that, I wouldn't imagine it would be a very long-standing committee, but certainly something that is important and would be beneficial to the park. So either of you would like to be on that?
No, I think I like to defer to Mayor Pro Tem Yu for anything art or aesthetic related.
Well, he is the architect in the family, so
So, yeah, I'll be happy to take that on, Mr. Mayor.
thank you. All right, so the art ad hoc committee will consist of Councilmember Viscara and Mayor Pro Tem Yu. Thank you, gentlemen, for that.
Good. Could we include a citizen with that?
Well, you guys can decide that at once you have a meeting and figure out what you want to do from there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just keep the council advised of what you're doing. That's all. Okay. All right. So, city clerk quote, is that all of them? Did you get those?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, that wasn't too bad. So now we will move on to number 14, council item separate apart from the city manager regular agenda, and I will first turn to Councilmember Mann. Anything further that you would like to add tonight?
Yeah, Mayor Chavez, just really quickly, I do want to make a shout out to an organization, IPAC, who donated a lot of PPE, masks, and protective equipment to City Hall. Mayor Chavez and I were there to, I guess, ceremonially receive them. When we had a public safety supervisor, Mr. Brian Arizumi, help us receive those into City Halls. And one thing actually I always slips my mind is that Donna Chen, who is the chairwoman of that organization, is actually a Temple City resident. So just want to shout out to them and great appreciation for them looking out for our city. One other quick thing is in the last board meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, one interesting noteworthy thing that was brought up was relative to, unlike some other chambers, they actually added some members during this period, which is I guess they had 4 new members, which is a little unusual. Usually chambers are losing members at this time. Businesses usually cut the membership fees first. So that was a bit of a good news throughout all this. The board did mention, and I guess this is more of a question for maybe Mr. Cook or Mr. Murphy to look at, is that they had a question about DoorDash and Grubhub, some of these online apps that are used to order food to go that's been heavily used lately. And they mentioned that a lot of times the fees and charges to restaurants makes their profits really slim to marginal. I don't know if the city has any, I'm not even sure if we have any say in regulating that, but they sort of alluded to that and asked us to see if there was anything we can do from a city standpoint. So I told him I'll bring it to council and staff, and maybe it's something I could talk to Mr. Cook separately offline on. But I just wanted the council to be aware of that. And besides that, I just want to shout out to all our first responders who are out there, everyone working in the medical field. I mean, this thing is, again, unprecedented, and we're all in this together. So, one other thing, I do want another shout out to staff for doing the cloth mask program that I believe we were advertising that on our city social media page today. So anyone who's 60 years or older could sign up for that, and I believe we will be delivering those to everyone who's eligible. So kudos to staff for that. I like the fact that it has the Temple City logo on the mask, so that's kind of neat. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councilmember Viscar, any comments?
Well, I want to thank all of you for being so welcoming to me. I appreciate it. I feel like I'm home. So thank you. Thank you once again. And I'd like to thank the staff, especially Peggy and Ileana, and of course our city manager for all the assistance so far. And please be patient with me. I'll catch on to the new reality. Thank you.
Well, you survived your first video meeting, so that's a good step in the right direction. So. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, any final comments? Can't hear you, Vince.
Well, it's my turn to forget to unmute myself.
Yeah, see.
But I wanted to say I want to extend a warm welcome to former mayor and current council member Viscar for coming home. And it's good to have you here to work with you, and looking forward to the time on the Arts Ad Hoc Committee. Shout out definitely to staff for watching out the city finance and looking around at other cities. with deep cuts and stuff. And I feel that we're fortunate to have a good team together, a good staff, and then I think our citizens hopefully would appreciate that as well. And again, I mean, it is great stuff. I'm repeating myself on the park, but can you imagine in this crisis, when all the cities are hurting, we can afford to build a brand new park without any impact to our city finance. So that's great stuff. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And hopefully keep our fingers crossed that when we open that nice park, we'll all be able to gather and enjoy it. So that would be an even better thing. Okay, so one thing I want to mention real quick. I received a phone call actually at my law office today from somebody who either works or resides in Temple City and had a question regarding the relaxation of the restrictions in Temple City. And she wasn't sure what we were doing or how we were doing it. Unfortunately, I didn't get the name, nor did they leave a phone number. So if you're listening out there, or if somebody is listening out there that knows who this person is, apparently they have a business or used to have a business on Temple City Boulevard, please let me know. You can either call me back, either at my city phone number, or of course, you have my office phone number, or of course you can contact City Hall and they would be glad to answer any questions you may have, or go on the city's website where we have a lot of information. And as you know, it changes day to day, as you've heard tonight. So, we try to provide the most up-to-date information that we can. So hopefully you'll be able to get that from someone. As Councilmember Mann mentioned, a big shout out to IPAC. Thank you for the donation of the masks and the equipment. It was a nice opportunity to meet with them. Donna Chen, who is, as Councilmember Mann mentioned, a resident, she left here with a sign. So we gave her a lawn sign. So she was very happy about that. So it was a good trade-off. And as Councilmember Mann mentioned, the seniors are defined now as over 60 years old. So Fernando, Vince, and I, we passed that milestone. That's the way to go.
We'll wear that mask at the next meeting.
Yeah, there you go. But they are very nice masks. We've seen them, and so make sure that you go ahead and ask for one, and we'll get that to you as long as the supplies last. Okay.
Where do we get them?
Through City Hall. You'll get one. Don't worry. The seniors on our council are going to get their mask as well. So
sorry, William.
Well, we might squeeze one in there for William too, since he's a.
Yeah, I kind of want one because it has the logo on there.
Yeah, it does have awesome. They're very nice looking. Okay.
It becomes a collectible item.
The collectible. There you go. It'll be on eBay someday. Okay. I just want to again thank everybody. I think it was a great meeting tonight. I think you all did a fantastic job, and that goes for staff, everybody who participated. I think there were some difficult subjects on the agenda, things that needed to be fleshed out and of course, you'll see more of that in the coming days. There's no question as we get through this crisis. So again, thank you all for doing that. So we will now move on to item 15, additional public comments on items not listed on the agenda. I'll begin by asking our city clerk if there are any email comments for this particular agenda item.
Mayor, there are no email public comments. Thank you.
Okay, so you go ahead and unmute the microphones, and I will ask those who are listening from the public if anybody has any final public comments to make. Very quiet out there tonight, so hearing none, I will close public comments. And with that, we are officially adjourned. So thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks, if not sooner. All right, thanks.
All right,
good night.
Mr. Mayor.
Good night, everyone.